The following episode is dedicated to our friend Scott Weitz, who has been a guest on the program several times. Scott passed away recently unexpectedly and has left a hole and deficit in the lives of everyone that he knew and touched. So this episode is in memory of Scott.
The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Big Ben Haslar presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Haslar. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, versus Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, follows the journey of Luke Skywalker as he joins forces with a rogue band of rebels to defeat the evil Empire and restore freedom to the galaxy. The Empire Strikes Back continues that epic space adventure as the Rebel Alliance battles against the Galactic Empire and Darth Vader, with Luke Skywalker just beginning to understand the ways of the Force. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, in civil cases like this, the counsel is appointed to represent each film and will present their case as to why their client is the superior movie. And ultimately, the jury will render its verdict as to which is the better film, and this decision will hereby stand in all rankings and listicles from now on until the end of time ad infinitum.
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr.
Marty
Marty Stone,
Ketola.
you nerds.
Yes, right. We get the final word on it. Mr. Marty Ketola, you are representing Star Wars A New Hope. You may present your opening statement.
Star Wars, 1977. It's such a game changer, that movie. I mean, without it, what else do you have? You don't have any more Star Wars, that's for certain. So I have a few simple arguments, because we could spend hours and hours and days arguing the merits of these films. So I'm going to keep it pretty basic and just have three main bullet points on why the original Star Wars, 1977, is the superior film to Empire Strikes Back. And number one, where else would you be without this movie? This movie is the beginning and the end. It's where it all came from. So that's my basic opening statement anyway.
Oh,
right.
I object to his opening statement.
In lieu of an objection, Mr. Clif Campbell, you may present your opening statement on behalf of Empire Strikes Back.
A good opening statement, Marty. I too will keep it short. Star Wars is a kid's movie. Empire Strikes Back is for the next generation and the generation after. The film deals with complex issues like love triangles, father-son relationships, and the idea of personal growth. Who you are doesn't mean that's who you will always be. Star Wars is the promise. Empire is the delivery of the promise. Therefore, it's just a better movie. Which would you prefer? The promise of a candy apple or the candy apple?
Are you bribing us and the jury?
If it gets me the win, sure, yeah.
I don't see any candy apples in your bag.
Maybe the promise of more candy apples to come.
Mm-hmm. What would you prefer, the promise or the candy apple?
All I see are promises coming from you. I don't see any candy apples. Mr. Marty Ketola, you may present with your first exhibit.
All right. So for my first exhibit, it'll go back to what the main point of my opening statement was, is this is the beginning of the whole Star Wars saga. This is one of those maverick movies from the 70s that when you watch it, it feels like it shouldn't work. It feels like the whole thing should fall apart, but somehow it connects together and creates this thing that we've never really seen before, or haven't really seen since, in such a perfect form. It's kind of funny when they were making it, the crew pretty much thought they were making garbage. They thought, what is this piece of crap? But yet somehow George Lucas had that insane vision of many of his fellow 70s filmmakers to just go out there and swing for the fences and then come back with a complete masterpiece that just blew everybody away. And Star Wars is the movie that inspired so many other filmmakers, and it's the one that everybody seems to point back to. I don't know if any of the other movies in the series we all went to a million times and seemed to worship and memorize. I know some of the others are well loved, and we're not here to say that the other movies are bad or anything. We're just trying to figure out which one we like the most out of the first two. But I think the first one is just definitely more influential overall.
Only Solo is the bad one in this court. It has been decided. Mr. Campbell, Star Wars sets the stage. Where would Empire be without this setting up of a great epic?
Well, Marty makes an interesting point. He says that, we haven't seen something like it since. And I would argue we've seen it over and over since. We've seen the Joseph Campbell hero mythos done over and over and over again. Lucas nails it in Star Wars. The young man who's from a farm, who's dreaming of seeing the wetlands one day, who encounters his Merlin, who tells him that he's special, and he goes off on his grand adventure. We've seen that over and over again. Star Wars nailed it, did a great job of it. Empire continues it. Empire fulfills it, gives you everything else that you want, right? What happens to Luke after he blows up the Death Star? What happens to Vader? Who is Vader? And we find these things out in Empire. Star Wars is, again, the beginning of a great journey, but it is not the best of the journey. The middle is the best part. The greatest second act in all of the trilogies of film is Empire, period.
So question from the bench, if it were on its own, how do you think it would be received? Like, is it standing on the shoulders of what came before it?
I would argue that it's richer with it, but I think that it stands alone without it. Like, it would be an interesting, although I would agree. I would say that, probably maybe the ending would be a little more bittersweet, right? Like if it was a standalone film, like, oh my goodness, what happened? That's the brilliance of Empire. The brilliance of Empire is that you're going to see Jedi, Ewoks or not, buddy. You're seeing that film. That's happening because you have to find out what happened to Han Solo. Is Luke going to face Darth Vader again? What's going on? What's up with this romance? He's in carbonite. Come on.
Very good. Mr. Marty Ketola, you may present your second exhibit.
All right. So this kind of ties into what we were just talking about here and with the first exhibits. What would happen if Empire was the first one you saw? Would you like it? Would you be confused? Would there be things you're not wondering what's going on? And it probably would make sense if you watched it first because they retconned the first movie out with that one. It seemed like Empire was, okay, here's the beginning of the franchise. Why would you take characters that everybody loved and just kind of throw it away? Nobody's related in Star Wars.
Oh, objection.
That was perfect. There was no, you're my dad, you're my sister.
Oh, I object to throwing the story away. You're not throwing it away. You're building upon it, sir. You're building upon it.
That objection is sustained. I do think it takes what's there and makes it better, but that is my opinion. The jury will decide.
Yeah, it's hard to argue these two pretty much perfect movies, but trying to get a little dirty there and thinking, hey, they threw that out and they said, well, we'll just start over. Your brother and sister and your dad. Why? Why? It would had they not done that, would it have changed anything over the last 45 years? So that's my second dirty exhibit there is they retconned the crap out of it.
All right. Do you have a rebuttal, Mr. Campbell?
I think the retcon is a concept of the new millennium and that it wasn't even a concept in the 70s and that there's no way he would have retconned it in the first place. And secondly, I don't agree with that at all. I think he built upon what he started in the first one. And here's the genius part of it. He knew he needed help. And so he went to one of the greatest screenwriters out there at the time, Lawrence Kasdan, and said, hey, buddy, what's up? And then he went to Irvin Kershner, who directed Eyes of Laura Mars and was like, yo, dude, let's do this. And created, again, the best second act in a trilogy of all. You and I can argue The Godfather on a later episode if you'd like. It's Godfather 2. We can go head to head on that. But for me, Empire is the best second act in a trilogy.
And then, unfortunately, he forgot everything he learned there and tried to do the prequels himself.
I object to bringing that into this argument, and I think we should stick to the facts.
Yes, I agree. That was shame on me.
Let's not taint the conversation.
Mr. Ketola, what is your third exhibit?
Oh, my third exhibit. Okay. Well, like I said, it's kind of hard to really argue these two movies at each other since they're both, they're both awesome. But first movie, no Muppets. We didn't have to rely on Yoda or what would become the Ewoks or Jar Jar. We had Chewbacca and we loved him, and that was enough.
What about the Jawas?
Becoming kitty more and more and more and more kitty as it goes along.
I would object to the Muppets. I would say that the only Muppet that worked was in Empire. Everything else afterwards became kitschy, B movie-ish. But Yoda worked in Empire. He was slow, he was old. It worked to the puppetry at the time, and it worked to the limitations of that puppetry. And it was great. Later, when Yoda's jumping around in the prequels with a friggin' lightsaber, you know what? Sorry,
I thought we weren't bringing that into this.
No, we're not bringing that up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But you see what that all led to?
Right. Good point. I can, yeah. I mean, afterwards, sure, but in Empire, it works.
Okay, but those are my three exhibits there. Pretty.
You were resting your case there, sir.
Yeah.
Very well. Mr. Clif Joseph Campbell, you may present your first exhibit.
Joseph. Okay, let's do it. So my first point again is this is where Lucas begins to world build, right? Star Wars is on a desert planet and a Death Star and inside of the cockpit of a ship. Empire begins on Hoth, a brand new world. We get all kinds of great battles. We move on to Dagobah. We have the Interceptor. We're on the bridge of the Interceptor. We move over to, I'm going to blank on the other planet, but we have multiple planets. We begin to world build. We begin to see more of the characters. This budding romance begins to build. This is the payoff of what we saw in Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is great. We love it. But the payoff comes in Empire when we begin to world build and see all the wonderful things. I'll point out that the rumor is John Ratzenberger, who's in this movie and has one line, this was the top thing on his resume for years.
Yeah.
After Cheers. It's an important movie and it means a lot to a lot of people. So that would be my first argument.
Who can fault him? Mr. Ketola, do you think there's any better, which sets the stage for what they're trying to accomplish better as far as creating a universe?
I mean, I think the first one does, because it's just, like I said, without it, what do you have? If you jump right in to Empire, it might be a little confusing, as the first film. Might not know what's going on.
Okay.
Suddenly you're in the frozen wasteland getting attacked by wampas and giant AT-ATs. I don't know what's going on. What's going on
here? Don't bring up the AT-ATs and the wampas. It helps him.
It's a case killer. Mr. Campbell, do you have a second exhibit?
Let's see. Yes, I do. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the end of the movie. The movie leaves you thinking, is that it? What happens to Han Solo? Luke got his hand cut off. What's going on with Darth Vader? Again, you're going to see the sequel. You have to. But you're also probably going to watch Star Wars again to see how it all plays now that you've seen the whole thing. Empire is the perfect bridge movie. It does exactly what it's supposed to. It continues the story from episode 1 while also outshining it. And at the same time, it perfectly sets up the end of the trilogy. As all middle parts of a tale should, it outshines the beginning and the end. That's my second exhibit.
Mr. Ketola, Han and Carbonite versus the victory celebration of blowing up the Death Star. Which stacks up better for you?
Well, once again, it's the first one because it's all self-contained. You don't need a part 2, a part 3. The good guys win. Darth Vader's off to do whatever else he's going to do. We don't even know who he is or what he is. What's under the mask? I don't know. I'll never know. It's scarier that way.
Why didn't Chewie get a medal? We don't know.
Oh, he knows why. He knows what he did.
He knows what he did. Mr. Campbell, what is your third exhibit?
I would argue that there's a bigger payoff in Empire. What do we see in Star Wars? We see Obi-Wan fight Darth Vader. Do we see Luke fight Darth Vader? No, that's what we want to see. But instead, we see Obi-Wan fizzle out and sacrifice himself to save a young man who's not ready. But he's ready in the second movie. It's about that second movie building on the first and being better than, and they pulled it off in so many ways. Every creative aspect they could come up with. Hey, let's do this ice planet. Let's have giant walking AT-ATs that shoot stuff. That's amazing. Let's have snow speeders and cables that sling around and knock AT-ATs down. And holy crap. And that's just the beginning 30 minutes of the movie. We haven't even moved on to Luke lifting X-Wings out of the lake with his force powers, facing Darth Vader in the tunnel, facing himself in the tunnel. It's a test, right? Like so many different aspects of that movie that just completely eclipse Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I saw it when I was 5 in the theater, and I saw it over and over again, but Empire's the better movie.
It's a fair point if you're saying Star Wars is self-contained, because Luke Skywalker is learning the ways of the Force, and he never fights anybody. He just does his thing in the X-Wing.
Exactly.
Mr. Ketola, do you think that's does his battle in the X-Wing and Obi-Wan speaking to him, does that complete that emotional mark in a self-contained story better?
Well, actually, kind of no, because Han is the hero of the first Star Wars movie, and then I guess Luke is the hero of Empire, so they flipped it.
So, but it isn't self-contained. You're saying it is reliant on Empire.
I would actually argue. I would actually argue that there is no hero in Star Wars. Obi-Wan sacrifices himself. Luke blows up the Death Star, but he's only able to blow up the Death Star because Han shows up and shoots Vader in the back. So there's really no true hero to that movie. The true hero in Empire is Luke facing Vader. Unfortunately, he fails the test, and that's part of the coolness of that movie. But there is no, in my opinion, there is really no true hero in Star Wars.
I just wish Luke had listened to Yoda, because if you value what they fight for, and apparently he didn't, and so he ran off and he gets his hand cut off, and then we end up with 7, 8, 9, everything.
That's the brilliance of Loris Kasdan's writing. If you're 12 and you're watching that movie and somebody is saying, sacrifice all your friends now and wait for the future, you're like, oh, my best buddy down the street, I can't do that. We ride bikes together. It's a completely we can't do that. No. The visuals in that movie are insane. Bespin Cloud City, still probably one of the best sci-fi reveals in sci-fi for that generation. They eclipse themselves in so many ways in that movie. It's ridiculous.
Do you have a rebuttal, Mr. Ketola? I think like George Lucas called like the first one like the best looking cheap movie there ever was, or something like that.
Right. Like they definitely it's no longer a 70s film once you get up to Empire, even though it's like shot in 79. It's definitely more of the slickness of the 80s to come, But I just like that ramshackle, dirty aspect of the original Star Wars.
It does have a wonderful charm. I can't argue that. But I think that charm is outshined again by perfect writing. The Empire has the best quotes. I know. Do we even have to go into that one? We've got. I mean, so many good ones from Leia, and I'd sooner kiss a Wookiee. Yoda's Force proverbs that still today are quoted everywhere.
Absolutely. Did you have another exhibit, or were you resting there?
The only other thing I have is, I think that they did a very brilliant thing in this movie where they turned the spaceship into a comic vehicle. In the first one, it's the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. Did the Kessel run in 12 parsecs? In the second one, the damn thing never hits light speed for the whole movie. When it hits light speed at the very end, when they need to get away from the Empire, when they've got Luke on the ship and Lando's driving. Other than that, everything else is turning on the hyperdrive dying, and Han trying to figure out and frantically explaining why this is the greatest ship in the galaxy. It was a brilliant sort of move to inject comedy that really wasn't there much in Star Wars. The comedy was in Star Wars, if you go back and watch it, just sort of hit and miss. It's here and there. And in Empire, bang, they're kind of nailing it throughout the movie. Throughout the movie, it's one thing after the other. Leia kissing Luke and Han having to watch that, and the Wookiee going, ha, 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 Now, I agree that's an awkward bit later on once we get past that, but at the time,
hey, they didn't know what they were doing.
Exactly. That's a bit
Ketola,
of retconning.
What is the funniest movie or moment in Star Wars that counters that?
You're probably right. It's more of a serious tone throughout that movie. There's not a whole lot of comical things that
let the Wookiee win.
That's a good one.
Here and there, but yeah, it's
not the droid you're looking for. Yeah,
but
I'm helping him.
Not really much of a comedy.
Situation normal.
Right. Yes, exactly. How are you?
We're fine.
I'm not biased.
We're fine up here.
I'm not biased. And you were resting there, Mr. Campbell?
Luke,
yes, I rest. Thank you.
Wow, 20 minutes. I wouldn't have called that debate going.
Yeah, I wouldn't have either.
Minutes. But very well. Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Ketola, you may begin.
While as Empire is an example of a really slick, polished, kind of perfect movie, Star Wars 1977, none of this A New Hope re-edit retcon nonsense. Just talking strictly original Star Wars, Vaseline under the lens, lights, land speeder shots. It's a movie that shouldn't work, but it works because of it, and that's why I like it even more, because I always tend to root for the underdogs.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell, please present your closing argument.
Geez. Let's see.
This is all you get, sir.
This is all I get. Okay.
This is your last stab.
A couple things here. So the entire film is larger and more grand than its predecessor. The promises of Star Wars are realized in Empire. The movie starts with tension. Think about Star Wars. It starts with tension, but then it just drops off into Poor Luke in the desert. We do escape from Hoth and the Empire, not this farm boy dreaming over the wetlands looking for a Merlin type thing. Darth Vader is not a vague, menacing evil in the second movie. He's defined. We find out who his character is. There's growth there in finding out who the villain is, which makes the villain even worse. You know, the more you find out why the villain is the villain, the more you either like him or hate him. And then basically, it's just a list of amazing, which is, you know, probe droids, tauntauns, cutting the tauntaun open to stick Luke in it. Han Solo can use a freaking lightsaber. Are you kidding me? How did we figure that out? The asteroid Falcon scene. Did I mention AT-ATs? I think I did. The asteroid worm, the romance, the Dagobah training, watching Luke's power grow. There's so much in that movie to absorb, and it's 15 minutes shorter.
Oh.
So in my opinion, it's not about which came first or started it. It's about which is better. And in my opinion, Empire's the better choice.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, Mr. Maynard Bangs, and Mr. Do or Do Not. There is no Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine which film is the superior movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict. I've always wanted to try a Wookiee steak myself, though I was afraid it might be a little chewy.
Oh, wow.
Classic. Ryan shot first. All right, everybody. Here we are, storming the foreman. Pretty short case considering we were talking about two movies that are so hotly contested. I was surprised. What got you thinking here, Schlenzo?
Well, I like where Marty was coming from about the first Star Wars movie, right? This is where it all begins, and that's very important. And it is very self-contained. I think you can watch this standalone, and it does very well. I do appreciate what Cliff brought to the table, though, about how this is kind of the promise of Star Wars. This is where Star Wars kind of becomes everything we know and love it for today is an empire, right? That's where, like, the extended universe that we would come to love throughout the rest of the movies, the book series, the video games. A lot of that goes back to Empire, because, as you know, the first extended universe novel was Splinter of a Mind's Eye, which was before Empire Strikes Back, and continuing off of just Star Wars, it was not that great, you know. So Empire brought a lot more to the table as far as the legacy goes, you know. But as far as like film versus film, I think there's maybe a better argument for Star Wars just being the stronger standalone film. But I of course, like to hear what you guys have to think.
Well,
too.
I mean, you also got to factor in, they changed the name of Star Wars to fit Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars is Star Wars until Empire, then it becomes Episode 4, A New Hope, which is a terrible title. But still, everything is altered. This is the fulcrum point. This is what defines the future. I mean, I love Star Wars. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore it. But Empire is the fulfillment of a promise.
That is what Cliff said. What are you thinking, Rob?
Well, see, I don't agree with your point, Schlenzo, as far as, this is where everything is introduced in Empire. I mean, Star Wars introduces the Force. It introduces lightsabers. It introduces Jedis. It introduces the Empire. I think Cliff said that there wasn't as much world building, and I think there is at least as much world building. Like, granted, yeah, it's a desert planet, but that's where you instantly hear about like the caste system that's kind of already happening. The classes going on, like it's an outskirt planet, and so that makes you think, oh, there must be high class planets, which you eventually get to see blow up. You get the Death Star. I think they vaguely mention the Emperor, but a lot of the table is set here. X-Wings, the Falcon, Chewie, a lot of stuff is set on the table in the first one. And as far as self-contained, I do agree, like, you could just watch Star Wars and never watch any other movie, and you got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas with Empire, I think one of the reasons it's so popular is it has the unhappy ending, but it's also a cliffhanger. It doesn't completely come back around. It wants to set up yet another movie. Like Star Wars leaves a couple things open-ended, like Vader flying off, and the Empire is still around, but if you never watch another movie, you would just assume that Luke will grow more and more powerful and win, based on this first victory. So you don't need to see more. You can assume what will happen. They saw there was more money to make by making more movies, but as far as a bridge film, it is a great bridge film, but because it doesn't have really a conclusion, then I think that holds it back a little.
And I will piggyback and say that as much as I think Empire is the superior film, Star Wars has the greatest scene in any Star Wars movie, and that's the cantina.
Mm-hmm.
That is an absolute fantasia for monster kids. Every single creature that you built out of paper mache in your garage shows up for at least 2 seconds. And oh my God, is that scene magical. Literally every single thing that happens in it is iconic for a reason.
Yeah. And I know that Marty was saying that it doesn't really have the Muppets, but it does. The cantinas have, they're not Muppets, but there's
Muppets
creatures.
are awesome. They could use
Muppets
more
are
Muppets.
awesome. Yeah. Saying that no Muppets is not really a strong argument to me. I think his point more is that it got childish. And I think it was in Cliff's opening statement that he said Star Wars is a kid's movie. And I think it's the opposite. I think Star Wars is the more adult film, and it becomes more kid-friendly as it goes on. Empire's not as bad as Jedi, but it gets more kid-friendly. Yoda's kid-friendly. And
I think they're both pretty much kids movies. I thought you can't watch either one and say like, oh, this is a sophisticated adult movie.
No, they're all made for children.
Yeah,
they're all definitely made for children.
But I think there's like maybe more of a preteen kind of thing, whereas I think Empire really does go a couple years younger. Like especially with like Yoda. I think there's more war in Star Wars, right? Like besides the Hoth battle, that is Empire's, to me, that's its big strength. Nothing in, I know Ryan said the cantina scene he thinks is the best. I think nothing in any Star Wars movies beats the Hoth battle scene. I think that is just the peak, as far as practical effects and just models and getting it's beautiful and well choreographed. It's really hard to top. Yeah, exactly. I love stop motion. But besides that, there's not a lot of war. You see, there's tons of dogfights in the first one, it's a dogfight movie in space for sure. It's the first one, and you've got the scenes where the stormtroopers have to come and slaughter Luke's family. So you really see the horrors of war. You have them making that attack on Alderaan and destroying it. There's a lot of war. A lot of Empire is Luke sitting in a swamp training. It's a Jedi movie a little bit more than it's a war movie. I think there's a lot more war in Star Wars. Schlender, I haven't heard from you for a bit.
Well, I think that's a fair point. I think the kinetic action that you get in Star Wars versus Empire is better. Like you said, Hoth is very iconic. The AT-ATs. A lot of symbolism there with those giant walking robots. Lucas definitely had a point of view. He definitely had a message. I think it gets through probably a little better in Star Wars than it does in Empire, and that's probably just because he doesn't direct Empire as well.
This wasn't brought up, but you get more C-3PO in Empire, right?
Well, that's always been my gripe upon rewatching the movies recently. I just never appreciate how annoying C-3PO is in Empire. He just does not shut up whenever he's on screen. So he's like Jar Jar Binks bad, in my opinion. So that brought Empire down a bit in my estimation.
Looking at the cool garbage monster too in Star Wars too. So there's the Dianoga. There's so many great creatures even in the first one.
And I think it's important that we establish that Han does indeed shoot first in the versions we're talking about here.
yeah, and I appreciate Marty's point of saying that he really wants to defend Star Wars, and I agree with that because that's why I like the movie. I like it. self-contained. Like I've got like a projector version of it, pre-digital, that I like to watch, and because I like the practical effects that are used. I don't want the CGI smooth over. That's what makes me like the first one. Marty used the word gritty, low budget. That's what I like. It is like a movie that should have failed, and against all odds, it managed to me, world build just as good as anything that came after it, and give a great self-contained story. So, Schlenzo, why don't you start locking in?
All right, very good. You are the foreman. So, I mean, again, we're talking two very strong movies. We're talking about very good arguments brought forward for both. But I'm just going to have to lean to the case that I thought was stronger today. So, even though personally I'm probably a bit more in a New Hope camp, I'm going to award this to Clif's case today because I think he just brought it and made the arguments better today.
Ryan?
Well, I think we all know here where I'm going with this one. Clearly, Empire is my favorite film of all time, so I am in the pocket. I am being unduly influenced by this masterful film, but this case did nothing to dissuade me from locking in that Empire is the superior film.
Oh, well, it is decided. I'll put in my verdict, though. I'm probably about as partial to New Hope as Ryan is to Empire. I've been vocal about my preference of the first movie, though I will say case to case, I also think Clif raised some really, really strong points, and I thought raised some great points about like theme and stuff that made me consider it. But since it doesn't matter which way I vote, I'm going to vote.
It does matter.
I'm going to vote Star Wars.
I care.
Because I like Star Wars. So I'm going to go with that. But that's
nerd.
not enough to get
I like
it out
Star
there.
Wars too.
So,
Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
there's not even any wars. There's barely any stars, especially not even Death Stars. Let's get out there and tell that very furry judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, versus Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, we find in favor of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
The verdict is so rendered. The Empire Strikes Back is to be considered the superior Star Wars film, and although A New Hope is not sentenced to become nothing more than a Star Wars legend, it must still serve penance by kissing a Wookiee. Court is adjourned.
I bet Wookiees taste great.
Hello there, Misa Baba Binks.
No.
What?
No
Look,
Barbar Jinx. You know, do
we can have
Foda. Just
we
do
can have
Foda. Foda is okay.
Foda, this is
Good. That's
live from Reels of Justice. I'm reporting. Marty Ketola, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
Should be Ketola Marty.
Well, this is Foda. I talk in more complete sentences.
Oh God.
Intellectually distinct I am.
And in forward motion as well.
Well, you know what they say, loser on Reels of Justice, winner in life, you know.
I do say that a lot, Marty.
All the
time.
And hopefully I'll be back for more chicken and the egg arguments like Halloween versus Friday the 13th or something like that. Or Porky's versus Porky's 2 in the future.
I'll take you
We
on.
already did Porky's 2 with Neil deGrasse
Porky's
Tyson.
2 locked away episode. Yeah.
Nice. Wow.
You can't beat
Subscribe
Neil.
to our
He'll give
Patreon.
you a
You'll get
DeGrasse
that
kicking.
episode.
Yeah, we're not allowed to air it, but if you send me $50, I can get you a Google Drive link.
In the link. Very well. Clif Campbell, here he comes. Excuse me. A word could we get on how you feel about verdict from today? I hate Foda.
I feel great. I feel like you guys made the right decision. It was really the only decision to make. Empire, Star Wars is. I saw that movie when I was 5, and I saw it over and over and over again. It's a great movie, and all the reasons that you guys stated that you love it, I completely agree with. But at the same time, Empire is just the better flick. That's just how it is.
Very much, thank you. That's all we have
from today's courthouse.
God damn it.
Back
Valiant
to the
effort.
studio. Let's go for analysis post-trial.
I think Foda's having a stroke.
He did not make it, man. He was two
No.
Muppets
You
here.
just mad you didn't get to do your Jar
You
Jar
brought it
Binks.
across the finish line, man. That's
It
what
was-
matters.
It was Barbar Jinx. and
Barbar
that's
Jinx.
Not as bad.
You
He's-
did commit to it. Congratulations.
a
You should be
bit
awarded
less-
for that.
might.
But fun case. I think this is a debate that will continue to rage, even beyond this. Although it
No, we
shouldn't.
got the final word on it. It's
We
done.
Yeah, I
should
figured
have
we
the
shut it
final
down right
word.
here, right?
We should, but people don't respect us. Not enough.
Our appeals
Um,
process is so backed up, so this
Ben,
one's
Ben, hot seat. If you were in the jury, which way do you think you'd go?
I don't want to do that, but probably Empire. I
There
think
you
the
go,
case is
Zay.
just slightly better, and I do like it slightly more.
There
But I
you
love
go.
the first one. I think
The
it
Wampa.
accomplishes more as far as like what it had to work with. It came from nothing, whereas Empire just has this huge head start on it as to how to make a good movie. So, but I don't know. George Lucas still managed to fumble that with the prequels, even with all that world building. So I guess
I like Attack of the Clones.
All right,
I like
I want
Attack
to
of the
take a
Clones.
moment to perpetuate a conspiracy theory I'm trying to get off the ground. I think Mark Hamill died in that car accident and was replaced by a double in Empire Strikes Back.
That's
same
some
thing-
Paul McCartney bullshit. What are you talking
But
about?
it's more
Dylan?
plausible, I think.
The
You guys
same
wanna know the
thing
most-
happened to the Ultimate Warrior in the 90s.
Yes.
Yes.
And did they say that happened to Avril Lavigne? Didn't she get replaced by a clone? I don't know.
No, robot.
Oh, a robot.
guys wanna-
Oh, right.
You guys want to know the most painful thing about Star Wars? Episode 1 has the best lightsaber battle. Period.
Yep. Yes.
It's the worst movie out of all of them, and it has the best, hands down, the best
Hey,
lightsaber.
Are you saying
that
episode
theme,
one's
Duel
the
of the Fates,
worst of
yeah.
the prequel or the worst of all the Star Wars? movies?
Worst of all of them. Period. Worst
No,
of all
it's
of them.
not the worst of all.
Yeah,
of them.
yes, sir, it is.
No.
Okay,
it's down the
I know, we
line
need-
between
it's
that.
a whole
and
new. It's a whole new
Rise of
episode,
Skywalker.
guys.
I think neither. I actually probably would watch episode 1, gun to my head, over episode 3.
I'd watch episode 3 every day of the week.
Oh
Over
God,
Rise of
that ending
Skywalker?
is so painful.
Yeah,
Oh,
dude,
the ending is
I
so
can't
painful.
get through the graphics on episode 1. I can't get through Jar Jar.
What about the pod race?
Now,
I
no, the pod race sucks. That's what sucked. Is it got
That's-
hyped up for the pod race, and
Jesus.
it's
The
actually
pod race
dull
is-
as shit.
Yes, the pod
The
race. is
video
just
game was good.
It's just the Death Star blow up all over again.
It's
That's
so
all it
boring.
is.
It's so incredibly boring. And I think when we watch it, right? Isn't there another lap, Ryan, and that most like DVDs cut out?
It's
Yeah,
cut.
additional
It's the second lap.
Like it was.
Oh,
they
boy.
restored it.
It was
Lucas
Thank you.
restored it for the DVD. It's like,
Oh,
really? You're
fantastic.
going to make this longer? The hell is the matter with you?
And I don't know, and I mean now we have the CGI Yoda in it, but like remember the original Muppet version of the Yoda?
That Muppet rules in the
I'll take-
original
I'll-
episode 1. I love him.
I'll take it over that CGI any day of the week. And honestly, I remember I was in the theater for when he pulls his lightsaber out and goes to battle with Emperor Palpatine, and I remember everybody whooping and getting really excited, and I was excited, and then I watched it later on video and went, oh
Yeah, it's
yeah, this is not.
What about the Dooku one? Is that one better?
Yes, the Dooku one's great. I have almost
Yes,
no
Dooku
complaints
one's
about Attack
okay.
of the Clones. Attack of the
it's
Clones
okay.
best of the prequels.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Absolutely.
Completely.
And you get Jango Fett.
Man, I like the theory that Qui-Gon Jinn ordered the clone army in secret, but I guess that's not how it ended up working
which
out.
holds
But,
up the pattern that
I
in
came
every
up with a
single,
great conspiracy theory for
in
that
every
one,
single
too.
Star Wars trilogy, the second film ends up being the best one.
Damn it, that was another note I had.
Yeah.
Ghost Ben sets up Qui-Gon. Sets up all of Qui-Gon stuff later on. You're welcome.
There you go. Anyway, that's a lot about Star Wars. Enough
But
about
not
that.
enough. We need Shadows of the Empire to be canon again. You heard
Yes,
it
Justice
bring
here.
for
back
Mara
that
Jade.
Rendar.
Thank you.
Restore the Rendar
I love that
verse.
Give me a live action Prince Zizor, please. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Lenzo
Yes.
likes to talk about how
Give me.
we all like Star Wars more than him, but he's like the only dude who's read all the books.
That's true.
And he
No,
had
no,
like
I've read most of them.
all the playing cards too.
No, I
I
did
had all
not
the
have
playing
I
cards.
never had the cards, actually. I just read a lot of the books.
I never played the game. I just collected the cards.
And I played all the video games, too. That's
I had all the micro machines. That's it.
Nice.
Oh, those are sweet, though.
So Marty,
Great
Cliff,
merchandise.
what has
Yes,
been keeping
no
you busy? What's been keeping you busy lately? What have you been doing?
Well, I just want to put my last little tag on the Star Wars thing before I
No,
jump in.
Marty. Okay, go ahead.
It's my last chance. I love the Muppets. You got to come up with something to, like you were saying, and more childish is more of my argument. But you know, Empire's always been my favorite throughout the years, so it's very hard to go against it. But the more I watch the original, you know, as the years go past, the more I have more of a greater appreciation for it each time I watch it. But
yeah, I rewatched them both for this, and I was shocked at how I haven't seen them in probably 6 or 7 years. It's not something I watch, but I was just like, dang, these are both just chef's kiss.
Bangers.
Like, there's
like
just
that
nothing
anymore.
wrong with them, man.
If we achieve anything here today, we should at least prove that if Empire's better, okay, but it's close.
yeah,
It is close.
Much closer than the internet would have you believe.
I like New Hope
Yes.
more and more every time I watch it, to be honest with you. I really do.
We're arguing about grains of salt on a plate. Like
Yeah.
it just had this too much salt on it. Like that's what we're arguing about. The food was delicious. It was just it had too much salt. That's it.
Yeah, I love salt.
See, there you go.
So Marty, Cliff, what has been keeping you busy lately? What have you guys been doing?
Well, we're almost done with our latest film called The Love Song of William H. Shaw. It's the sequel to Revenge of Zoe, a movie we put out a few years ago, and we started filming that way back in 2019. But as you know, the world shut down, and it made it really hard for some of us with
Didn't
no
it?
money
Yeah,
to,
what happened?
I didn't hear.
Yeah, well, don't worry about it now. We're in 2023, and now we actually have a new movie. And Cliff and I have started up a new podcast called Making Pondo, and that's where we interview people that we've made movies with, and that'll be launching here in a couple of months.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But besides the podcast, what's the movie drop looking date? Are you guys still editing? Do you have a season it looks like it's going to drop in?
Well, let's see. We are really hoping to be done in March.
Oh, nice.
So we should start entering it into some film festivals in maybe May or June. It should be out, I'm guessing.
And for people who didn't know that this is the third part of the trilogy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to be one of those rare trilogies, unlike Star Wars, where the third part's the best part, right?
That's exactly, you nailed it.
Yeah.
The second was good. It bridges the first and the third, but that third one,
There's a Wampa in it too.
Now, Marty, last time we talked, you were talking about getting the first one to some streaming services, maybe if the rights worked out. Like, is that one available anywhere yet? Because I know the second one is.
Yeah, Writing Frenzy, right?
Yeah, Writing Frenzy. We're hoping that our distributor is interested in picking that one up after they pick up the new one.
Gotcha.
So figuring if they grab that one and it does well for them, that it's like, hey, this one's done. Go ahead and grab that, and you have all three, and you have a trilogy right there on Tubi for everybody to stream. So
3-disc steelbook.
I'm telling you,
Dylan loves Tubi.
And then I do love Tubi. And then you could go back and add all the CGI monsters you weren't able to do the first time.
We need Dewback after Dewback. We need countless more Dewbacks.
I'm not complaining about the Dewbacks.
Marty, you know what? I just realized, you know what Writing Frenzy needs? It needs Billy Shaw stepping over the tail of Jabba the Hutt. That's what it needs. That's what'll fix the movie.
That's what's gonna clean it up. Well, what were the original banthas, Ryan? Where they threw fur on like a cow or something?
On an elephant.
Elephant, yeah. Poor little elephant in the middle of the desert.
This is supposed to be a low budget movie, but you're telling me they had hairy elephants? That doesn't jive.
No,
they had elephants and they added the hair.
Yeah, elephants were very cheap back then. I mean, in the 70s.
Why
do you think there are so
Coke?
Why do you think there's so few of them now?
You need an elephant? You need an elephant? I can get you an elephant.
You need an elephant? I'll get you an elephant, man. I just need one more hit.
Lucas had an elephant guy. He's like, I know a guy.
You want a toe? I can get you a toe.
I'm gonna get that eye. So excellent. We're looking forward to the film dropping, and we'll definitely have you guys back too when it's finally out for the public to view everywhere. And now on the podcast, what are those dates looking like? Was it Making Pondo?
Yeah, Making Pondo. So we're trying to kind of coincide that with the release to film festivals. So somewhere in April or May, we're going to start launching episodes. It's basically, we want to talk about film, but we don't want to sound like we are on this podcast. Like like we're on this podcast like Lucas really shit the bed on Star Wars. I mean, we don't want to do that. So we're trying to talk about films through the experience of us making them. So we're talking about people that we've made films with and talking about hey, what was this? How did you feel about the struggle here when we did this type of thing? It was a lot of fun. There's some really great people that we've worked with, so we're excited for it to come out.
Yeah, we said a lot of nice stuff about Lucas too.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just. I'd love.
But he really shit the bed.
He did. Dude. Episode 1. I'm just gonna say. But yeah, it's coming out soon, and then we've got like Marty said, the film's coming out soon. We're in the last stages of sound stuff and trying to get it tweaked to where we like it, and then the world will see it.
Yes, this is like where your knees are compressed and you're ready to spring forward.
Dude, I'm behind it. Literally, I'm Marty and I are behind the film, just physically pushing it with our just like a car that's broken down. We're just getting it across the finish line. Just come on.
And I know it's too soon to tell. Do you have plans for another movie coming up after that? I mean, just even vague ideas.
We do, yeah. So we do.
Looking forward to even more then.
Quite possibly something very, very shocking coming from Hondo Enterprises.
It may shock you, may even discredit you. Excellent. So we're looking forward to that. Now, we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. So, Cliff, you were victorious, so why don't you go first? What is a movie you think people should see?
Well, a wash in victory. I will say that the movie, I love films that are based on music, not musicals, but films that are about music, in particular with bands and so on. I'll recommend The Commitments. I think it's 94, about a guy in Ireland who decides to start up a band. He gets a bunch of kids together and they start up a rhythm and blues band, a soul band in Dublin, Ireland, and it's fantastic. At one point, it was Ireland's most vulgar movie. I think the F word's said over 400 times in that movie. It's fantastic. But it's also fantastic. Like give it a listen. Alan Parker directs. All the vocal recordings are recorded live during the actual film performance. They figured out a way to play the music back in what they call off phase, so the audio mics wouldn't pick it up. So every vocal that you hear is actually the vocal from the actual performance that you're seeing in front of your face. Fantastic movie.
Oh no, that sounds excellent. And the most vulgar Irish movie. It's pretty impressive. 400 fucks, but even the kids' movies in Ireland have 200.
Sure. So, yeah. I think it was more like, hey, here's a bunch of teenage kids and they're really vulgar and it's representing Ireland. We should not do this. But, whatever. Fantastic.
Awesome. Marty, what is your recommendation?
Well, my recommendation for the week is going to be another musical. Yeah, I feel it's the best of the most recent Star Wars films. That is the Coen brothers Inside Llewyn Davis, starring Oscar Isaac and Adam Driver.
Poe Dameron.
Where else you get to see what is his name? Poe Dameron.
Poe Dameron. Yep.
Kylo Ren sing a song with Justin Timberlake about going into outer space. Only in Inside Llewyn Davis.
Oh, excellent. So besides that, I mean, anything about that film really stand out to you? Like what would you say its real strength is?
Oh, I think it's like, do you like the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Mm-hmm.
The Coen brothers film. It's kind of like that, but it's kind of like a darker version of it. It follows the whole Odyssey, Iliad type framework, but it's more of a darker struggle of this guy who was a folk singer in the early 60s, but the scene's changing and now it's switching to Bob Dylan and these other newer forms of music, and this guy's kind of getting lost in the wash.
Yes. Sort of built into the music industry. It's fantastic.
Strangely enough, it was made a couple of years before Force Awakens, and yet has those two together singing. So
probably how they met and probably got the same agent.
Space.
So is Timberlake in a Star Wars movie? Not yet, but maybe
he may have been with a helmet on.
He's one of the Jedi in Attack of the Clones.
From what I heard, there were so many dang famous people in the last trilogy with helmets on. It was ridiculous. Daniel Craig was in one scene. And all these others.
All right, great. So Ben, you were the judge. What is your recommendation?
My recommendation isn't technically a film, but it is on Letterboxd, which counts in my book. So I'm going with the Disney Plus series Obi-Wan. For me, Obi-Wan exposed a story that was far more necessary than I realized. In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin turns dark side in the third act of the movie. He and Obi-Wan fight for a little bit, and then bam, it's over. New Hope time. And we never get to feel the impact of the emotional trauma that these two characters inflicted on each other. Some vague lines about the circle being complete doesn't really seem to do what Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen did as the younger counterparts justice. Enter the series Obi-Wan, which I think does a fantastic job filling in that gap in a very entertaining way. And now it stands as my favorite Star Wars series, placing it slightly above Andor and way above The Mandalorian and way, way above the Clone Wars that people swear to me is good if I could just survive the first few seasons. You can find Obi-Wan on Disney+.
And Lil Leia. You cannot discount Lil Leia.
Baby Leia?
Grogu, fight me.
Lil Leia. Oh,
Baby
she's
Leia,
delightful.
huh?
Oh,
Boy,
she's so cute.
That just sounds
Oh,
like
I
nothing
love
but
her.
another argument for The Empire being the better movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what about was it Book of
Boba Fett.
Boba
Yeah.
Fett? Ben
Yeah,
didn't like
nobody
that
likes
either?
it.
It's about equivalent to The Mandalorian in my mind, maybe slightly worse. So yeah,
I
no,
don't like The
I love Andor, though.
Mandalorian.
I thought Andor was great.
Andor's great.
Mandalorian was good. Boba
I
Fett
liked
was-
Mandalorian, so then
I don't
got
like
really
Mandalorian.
high
I don't
hopes.
like
Me
Grogu.
too,
He's
me
not a
too.
character. He's just cute, and that's it. You know, I need more from him.
That's children, you know. That's he's an object.
And he
He's
eats
a
that mother's
prop.
eggs in one episode. Like he's the bad guy in one.
You know, the problem with Boba Fett was the freaking Italian scooter gang. That was the problem.
Yeah,
with
that
the
was
Book
a
of
problem.
Boba Fett. That was, you take that out. Book of Boba Fett's great. He jumps on a Rancor at the end. It's amazing. But with this, with the Italian beep beep, type of thing, it was just terrible. It's not good.
Well, it also just shifts on what Boba Fett's all about. Like, why is he trying to be a gang lord all of a sudden? It doesn't
Exactly.
seem like.
Yeah, I don't know why Star Wars has such problematic characterizations of so many alien species.
It's kind of one of my favorite things about it. Like they've been screwing that up since Jedi. Like they've been dropping the ball on that for a long time. But at the same time, it's kind of endearing. Like it's kind of one of the things about Star Wars. Like if it was missing, you go, oh, where's the Jar Jar character I hate?
Yeah. Yeah, where's the trade commission leader guy?
Yeah. And you guys saying 3PO is the equivalent to Jar Jar. I don't know who said that, but you're wrong. And
It was
Yeah,
me.
Dylan's wrong.
And I
You're
stand
wrong.
by that.
You're
You,
wrong,
sir.
Dylan.
No, I stand by that. He's super
you
annoying in
shouldn't stand by
Empire.
that. You should sit by that. That's terrible. That's not good.
No, I line in the sand. I'm firm.
Guys, we hate both of them. Okay,
I respect your line in the sand.
And,
No, when Mayor said that, he meant us. He hates both of us.
no. I like Cliff just fine.
Woo!
Ryan, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation this
Oh.
week concerns the greatest chapter in the Skywalker saga, the Star Wars Holiday Special from 1978.
Wow.
You get
I'm
Diane Carroll having VR sex with Chewbacca's father, or uncle, or son. It's never really clear. You get Harvey Korman pouring an alcoholic beverage into an orifice atop his head. You get that great Boba Fett cartoon. It's a life day miracle. Join our coked up bipolar princess Carrie Fisher and watch the entire special on YouTube, or get the outstanding riff from Riff Tracks that includes all the original commercials at rifftracks.com.
Oh, that is
Marty, you promised they wouldn't bring one up.
Oh, we always will.
I'm
He
the
didn't
wild
clear
card,
with us.
baby.
Always bring up the holiday special. Did you watch it this past holiday season, Ryan?
I did,
Oh,
and I love it so.
I hope it filled and made your days merry and bright then. So I'll go next. Once my document loads, super slow. Boop.
Dylan.
So when Star Wars was released in 1977, it changed the entire landscape of sci-fi cinema, sparking a cavalcade of imposters and impersonators for years to come. Although my recommendation today is not really one of those, because it started production earlier in the decade. It certainly took some influence from Lucas's space epic, 1979's The Black Hole. Not only was it the most expensive film produced by Disney at that time, it was also their first film to receive a PG rating. It tells the story of a crew of a research vessel who happen upon a seemingly abandoned ship near the edge of a black hole, only to find it still occupied by a mysterious scientist and his army of robotic drones. It's definitely a dark story for Disney. I don't think people would have recognized it as a Disney film, but it is. It's got a ton of robots, like I mentioned, which are always a great standard for any excellent kind of film. And the practical effects were really excellent. I know they were looking to borrow equipment from Industrial Light and Sound, but they weren't able to get it at the time. It was too prohibitively expensive. So they ended up doing some interesting computer-controlled camera work. So rather than like computer controlled like miniatures and models that were used in Star Wars, they ended up using a different kind of practical effects and using some very interesting techniques. So it's definitely a movie worth checking out. And if you want to check it out, I believe it's currently streaming on Disney Plus, right, Ryan?
Yes, it is.
It should be. I know it wasn't there at first, I think.
It's there now.
But they did eventually put it up there on Disney Plus, so you can check it out. It's got a very cute robot and a very evil looking robot. So
great film.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, great robots like C-3PO. I get what you're saying.
Well, not like C-3PO, but
yeah, right. Because C-3PO is better. I get it.
Less annoying. I'll take Vincent over C-3PO.
I hear what you're saying.
Absolutely. So Schlenzo, I think you were able to send us on home.
Happy to do it, Maynard. So I don't really think Mark Hamill was replaced by a clone, and I can prove it because he was in one of the best action-packed sci-fi films of all time, 1991's The Guyver. He lends his talents to this film, and you are sure to be entertained. The film is a thrilling tale of a young man who discovers a mysterious device that gives him superpowers, and he must use these powers to fight against an evil corporation hell-bent on taking over the world. It has an engaging story, impressive special effects, and top-notch action. The Guyver is a standout film in action sci-fi. Watch it today, streaming everywhere. And if it's not there, you must have done something wrong. Yes.
Is it streaming?
Now, what is the connection between The Guyver and MacGyver?
I was going to make that joke. How dare you step on me?
Well, actually, the thing about that, I got nothing.
Well, good.
One of them is just MacGyver.
All right.
Yeah, he cut the legs out of all of us, didn't he? But it's also got robots, right? Or is it a suit?
No, it's he has a like a Power Rangers style suit, and there's just monsters, and it's all like in rubber suits kind of stuff. You'd love it, Maynard.
Oh, of course I would. Yeah, no, I mean it's not Japanese, so it's not really tokusatsu, but it's
my favorite. Well, it's based off of manga and possibly an anime as well. So it's from the East.
Well, I mean, you have to use the Japanese filmmaking techniques too. You can't just be inspired by Japanese works to count.
Hey, you're such a nerd. Who knows?
Yeah, it's true though. And excellent. So then, with that, we are all out of show. And I know it's disappointing. But we want to thank our guests Marty Ketola and Clif Campbell for joining us. Thank you both.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yep, we look forward to having both of you back.
Please, and we'll let Marty win next time, no matter what film it is. You get to pick it.
He said,
and you're prosecuting it.
We'll do Godfather Part 1 versus Godfather Part 2. I really liked Part 1 for its grittiness, but Part 2 ends with Michael Corleone trapped in carbonite, and so I think that's really.
It really kind of does, though, doesn't
That's
it?
well played, sir.
And we hope everyone else will join us again as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Muppets.
Dak.
So at the beginning of the program, we mentioned that this episode was in memory of Scott Weitz, who is a friend and a frequent guest of the podcast. Like we said, this episode was dedicated to his memory. He always loved sci-fi and horror, and Star Wars sort of stuff was just exactly up his alley. And I know you guys said you wanted to say a few things, so I figured we would take a little time here at the end and include that as well.
He's one of my favorite guests to have on this show. I never interacted with him personally, except for on Facebook throughout, but I went against him for Scream, and I went against him for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They were both great. He brings so much energy on it, especially on the Scream one. But I think my favorite one is when he went against Dylan and took Die Hard's a Christmas movie, because he took that joke that we sort of have about, doing things that are subjective and maybe don't really matter, but took it so seriously. He just played into the joke so well. It's absolutely in my top 5 episodes. He was a great guest to have on. I loved his energy.
Die Hard was guilty of being a Christmas movie, if I remember
It was.
correctly.
Yes, it was.
Well, it's a weird format, so we had to work into it.
Thanks to his efforts.
But
And
I know that Scott too. Speaking of that, for months later would send Dylan messages
Yes.
with like interviews from the director and proof that it was a Christmas movie. He lorded that over him for quite a while.
No, that's true, and that's something I loved about Scott. Not only on the show, obviously his episodes are tremendous, but right after his Scream episode, I knew I wanted to know this guy better and be friends with him. We became friends on Facebook right away, and then of course culminating in the Die Hard episode, he would tag me every Christmas reminding me that it was a Christmas movie, and it was all in good fun, and he was just such a tremendously talented man. He also had the Dread of Night radio series, the episode that he was able to get
Which
out,
you should all go listen to, because it's outstanding.
Yes, absolutely. Take the time to listen to that. He had a lot of friends of his involved with that, other people who have been on our show too. I mean, we've been really blessed doing this show. We've met amazing people. They've been introduced into our lives, and losing Scott definitely hurts. And he'll be missed, not just in the context of doing a movie podcast, but just being a great guy to know and talk to. So he will be missed.
Yeah, I also had the privilege of working with Scott in the capacity of like writing. Back when we did the Damn Dirty Drive-In podcast, Scott and Frank Dietz collaborated on one of our radio plays. It was called Albert Kitschlock's The Films That Blew Too Much, and they were 5 Hitchcock parodies. And if you have the opportunity, I would Google it. Kitschlock, The Films That Blew Too Much. I think it was Albert. And Scott wrote a really, really hilarious, like tongue twister of a segment. It was called Dial N for Necktie, and it's just ludicrous and silly, but really funny. And hanging out, working with him like that whole weekend too. We had all the actors, and he was a very controlled and confident director. Knew what he wanted in all those segments. And so I really admired his writing and his creativity. But then when the mics were off, he was just a really cool guy to hang out with and chat. He knew so much about movies, especially like horror and sci-fi stuff. That was really his forte. He loved Star Trek and just everything sci-fi. So it was a tremendous shock and tremendous loss. And I'm sure it'll only keep hurting, but Scott was a great guy, and we'll miss having him on the show and in our lives.
We miss you, Scott.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.